Number one, the other family members, your own family members, know you. You'd like to think they know you, but this is actually incredibly painful grief-inducing journey part of this for a lot of people who say, wait a minute, my family they're actually falling for this whole thing. So I always tell people, I said, we gotta remember about most people, and it's an uncomfortable truth of most people. Most people want to maintain the status quo. They liked it. You were married to someone and you had the kids and there was the holiday and wasn't this fun and they were nice enough and they always brought a nice bottle of wine and isn't this great, right? Status quo, status quo, status quo. We are homeostatic creatures and most people aren't that rebellious. They want to maintain that. So especially in a family system or a culture where divorce or marital dissolution isn't part of the story, there's always that sense like it can always get worked out, right? Meanwhile, you've probably tried to work this out, or somebody in one of these relationships would have tried to work this out 1,000 different ways, and it just wasn't happening. So what can really be painful is when the other person, let's call them the manipulative antagonistic partner, can actually get into one's own family system and say, hey, this happened and they said this and they did that, and I didn't want this to end, and whatever it may be. It can be very, very confusing for those family members, especially if this isn't something they know about, right? Not everyone is informed about antagonism or toxicity or difficulty or whatever the hell you want to call this, right? Most people don't get that. All they see is like, wait a minute, you mean I'm not going to see the grandkids at every holiday? That's what they're seeing, right? They're seeing that disruption in the status quo. And very few families are so sophisticated, but they can have the conversation on that level. They just see a disruption to something that was working. And again, that can be a real source of grief. And I will say to people, if you feel safe with your family, to sit down with them and say, okay, I didn't want to speak badly about them to you, but I'm going to have to really lay out for you what happened in this relationship. If, however, your family system is also antagonistic, you're not going to be able to get through to them. And if anything, this is just going to be one more weaponized way for them to say, see, you're the problem kind of thing. One more place for them to get a dig in. And this just becomes that landscape of grief that occurs. Now, in the luckiest people, the antagonistic person kind of gets the ears of the person, of a person's own family. And that family says, wait a minute, what's happening here? Like they're saying all this weird stuff about you. And you're able to say, okay, this is what's going on. And they hear you and it all comes to a nice resolution. But I got to tell you, that's the minority of cases where that happens. But a lot of it comes down to people sort of not wanting the status quo to have gotten disrupted. And if you yourself are being private about it and not giving the gory details to your family, and someone else comes along and gives what feels like a plausible version of events, some people will glom onto that and say, well, at least someone's explaining to me what's happening. So you have to be ready for that. And so in cases where you feel safe enough with your family, you don't have to come in with the cavalry and say like, hey, all these terrible blah, 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 gaslight, blah, 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 narcissistic. You don't have to say that and say, listen, this was tough. And over time, this and this, stick to behaviors. This and this happened, and it left me feeling this and this. And you even noticed some of the changes in me. And I had to make that painful decision of what would be healthier for me and the kids. And this is the path we're taking. Presenting it in a very, very sane way. Again, if you have a moderately sane family, they'll hear it. But the more you leave the family in the dark about what's happening, they're going to glom onto anything they're given. And a difficult, manipulative, antagonistic ex-partner will get in there. And especially if they have any kind of relationships or friendships with people in your own family.